When we're defining the movement of our wave, it's best to work inside of a whole series of passes. We need to create a simplified structure that's ultimately going to turn into a very complex movement. So let's begin with its basic moving parts and pieces, and we're going to try to keep this as simple as we can. As we discovered in the last video, we have 3 different areas inside of our character here that's going to generate the wave. Well, the first thing that we need to do is define the movement in the keyframes, the structure for that base pose itself. Because in every sense, the engine of our entire movement here is going to influence and determine the movement and the posing and the timing of the other 2 segments inside of our animation. So let's go ahead and do it real fast. And I just drew this with the simple draw tool and did a small little curve edit. I selected the point down here at the end, and I used the radius tool to give me this wonderful little taper, but it really isn't anything too fancy. And I think I'm going to arbitrarily just start with every 5 frames, I'm going to have a keyframe. Okay, let's go ahead and do it real fast. Let's get in here. I'm going to make my work area just a little bit bigger. There we go. Okay, cool. So let's jump into edit mode and we can start working on defining the movement of our little guy here. Okay, so here's my 2 points. And I think what I'm going to do on this keyframe, over the course of the entire animation here, we want it to go forwards and then backwards. The desire is to have this be a loopable animation. Well, how many frames are we going to need? Well, let's do this. Let's start with the end. Let's go over here to frame 30. That's a good place to begin. And so in my imagination, it's going to take 1 second to go from the left side to the right side, and then another second to go back. Okay, so it's going to go swish, and then swish back this way. Okay, so it's 24 frames going this way, and then 24 frames or so going the other direction. Just to keep the math easy, we'll have it every keyframe be 5 frames, and then we'll go back and adjust it once we're real happy with the final result. Okay, so over here is where we want our animation to end, or where we want it to end its first cycle as it goes all the way to the left. Let's do it real fast. I'm going to go into point mode, start grabbing some points, and I'm just going to spot check it over there. So it's going to go there, and then it's going to go there. So this is kind of the end angle that I want it to be, and I'm going to have it probably curve outwards like that. And that's a good place to go. Okay, so like I said, we're just going to do this in passes. We're not going to animate this little top point yet. That's going to come here in a minute, because once we have the engine established, then we'll move up a point and start working on that middle section. Okay, so if this is where we want it to end, let's do this. I am going to copy this keyframe, Shift D to duplicate it, and I'm going to put this duplicate way out over here on frame 50. So now it's just going to go there, and then it's going to go back over there. Okay, cool. So this is going to be a loopable animation. The first frame and the last frame are going to be identical. Okay, great. Now I'm pretty pleased with this. Let's start bisecting the timeline and going into that middle portion. Now, in the middle, it should be somewhere right around in here, or let's just kind of conceptualize what that can look like. So if I grab it, let's see, maybe right around in here. Let's see. Yeah, I'm liking that. I'm liking that. Let's do the exact same thing on the other side, so on the backwards motion. So if we go forward to frame, what would that be? Frame 40? Let's grab that point, kind of put it back in here. Let's play the animation. Let's see what we got so far. Yeah, we're starting to see it. I think I lose a little bit of volume on this middle pose. It looks a little short all of a sudden. And that's the thing to be considering about here. We want to keep the proportions as equal and as consistent as we can through the duration of the animation. And I don't like that pose. It's a little too extreme. I'm just going to change the angle of it. Okay, that's the structure. That's the structure for the engine itself. So now we move up a point. Now we move into the center. Let's go, and we're going to work with the existing keyframes. We're not going to add anything else, but we're going to follow the exact same sequence. We're going to start with the extremes. This is the extreme pose over here. This is the end of the entire movement on this side, and then back to its extreme pose on the other side. So on frames 1, 25, and then 50. Okay, so in frame 25 here, how do we want the middle section to be posed itself? Well, I think probably what might be a cool idea in this movement is to start kind of motivating that this section is following this the engine itself, and we're pretty close. We want to have this really wonderful arc here. These 2-point curves do a great job of just giving me a wonderful sweeping arc, but I want to have a third point in here. Let me show you a great little trick. I'm going to go into my stroke selection set, and if I right-click on the stroke, the first option that we have in the context menu is subdivide, which is going to give us an extra point, or it should have given us an extra point. Let's try this again. Let's go back into stroke selection. We have the stroke selected. We'll grab the curve. There we go. And now we'll just click in the middle. I'm sorry. There we go. And now it's working just fine. I've noticed that with Blender sometimes, if you're not getting the action that you desire, drop your selection, kind of restart the selection process, and that will clean up any bugs. So with the third point in here now, we can very easily go in and start grabbing it and start crafting a curve that we think is going to be that's going to work. Now let's see here. I want to try to make it a nice sweeping curve as much as I can. Yeah, let's see how that looks. Yeah, as I flip back and forth between these two poses, and then 25, here it is in 1, 25, so this is like the beginning, this is the end. I am changing my mind. I know that I said I didn't like the angle of attack there, but I'm going to try to make it the exact same angle as I had over there. Yeah, something like that. That's pretty cool. And I think with this middle point in here now, I'll definitely have the ability to craft an angle that I'm pretty excited about. Yeah, I'm going to try to make it as broad and as sweeping as I can. And sometimes that requires us to go in and kind of very subtly manipulate both of the handles that are establishing the bottom of the curve and the top of the curve. Yeah, I'm liking that. That's pretty cool. So that's a good extreme pose here because it looks as though it starts and then it goes that way. It bends to the right. That this part in here, the motor is influencing its entire structure and its entire movement. Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going here. I'm liking the way this is working. Of course, this is the return journey. It goes from there. Now it's animating back, and it's going to go home to its original pose. So, on its back pose, and on the breakdown poses in between the two extremes, let's just really closely see how it looks like. And I'm really looking at my onion skinning right now to see what I'm getting. So the green one is the past. The light bluish purple one is the future. And is this extreme pose suggesting that movement enough? And I think that it is. I think it's doing a really great job. Let's do the exact same thing on frame 40. The green is the past, the light blue is the future. And on this one, I'm going to make a small adjustment. On frame 40 here, I'm going to start moving this around a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Because I want it to look as though it hits this and then starts to slowly come around, and then eventually it'll land back over there. All right, so I'm pretty pleased with this structure on that for that middle point. Now comes the fun part of that end point, the third segment in our 3 parts, if you will. We've done the engine, we've done the middle, and now we're going to do the tip of the wave itself. And this is really where the wave starts to come alive, because this tip is going to be the most deformed point inside of our animation. So let's go ahead and start exploring it. Over here is really good. Now the tip is going to drag. It's going to be following the motor. So on this frame, the tip is not going to be way out over here. The tip is going to start to be over here. Okay. Yes, and I think I lost a little bit of volume. It got short all of a sudden. And I'm looking at the purple keyframe that's in front of it in comparison to the green. Yeah. So we got to be mindful of our proportions. Yeah, I'm liking that. Let's just see where this takes us. So now it's going to flip forward to the end. Now, if it's the angle is going to be this way for the end, what's this going to look like? Well, let's figure it out. I don't know. This is the fun part of animating, is that you get to literally start making this up. Now, I don't necessarily like what I have here. Yeah, let's see if we can figure out a nice pose in here that's smooth and arced. When you're working on this, I would really encourage you to be as diligent, to have as few points on your stroke as you can. That way you're always producing these wonderfully smooth arcs. Yes, okay, I'm liking this. Frame 1, frame 2. This is the anticipatory movement, is the opposite. The pose is going in the opposite direction of the line of action. Here's the final resting pose. So the wave has done one cycle. It's animated all the way to the right now. And now we got to start coming back. And this is where it gets really fun, because even though the motor is starting to come back, we want to have the tip be really extreme. Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't move quite enough. So I think what I'm going to do is that I'm going to let's make a fun pose like this. Let's see what happens. Because now, yeah, I'm starting to dig this a little bit. Let's see what happens. Let's play it. Yeah, I think at the tip here on this pose, this keyframe or this point is too small. Same with this guy. Yes, there it is. That's starting to look a little bit better. Let's play it, see what we get. I may be able to drive it a little bit more. The angle could go a little bit more in here. Yeah, look at that. Because remember, the driver of the motion is down here. It's coming to the left. It's coming to the left, so the tip should be following it, should be dragging behind it like a fluid, soft motion, so it should be in the right. And this little S curve in here is helping us establish that very directly. Let's play the animation as it is. Yeah, I'm starting to like this. Now, this is only a few keyframes, but the underlying structure is what's important, and the process in which we design this is even more important. We're not trying to animate the entirety of the stroke all in one session, all in one drawing. By breaking it down into a whole series of component pieces, the process of animating this curve in this wave pattern becomes a whole lot easier. We start with the engine, we keyframe just that one part. Then we do another pass and we keyframe that middle part, or we establish the pose for that middle part. And then once we're happy with those poses, then we go on and start doing the final segment, which is the tip way out over here. This sequence really kind of drives home the fact that the entire motion starts down here and ripples and flows to the tip itself. So by following that motion with our construction practice, we're getting a more organic, fluid result.